Well, I just got the call from a guy at Wildlife Fisheries and Parks. He's supposed to be going and meeting me at our land today so that he can help me try to identify if there are any invasive species out there, just different plants that we might want to not have on the property. And he was going to give me some recommendations on programs that the USDA have for like helping you out with buying trees and planting them and that kind of thing. So that's pretty cool. I'm excited. I'm going to go out to the land now and meet him. We're going to kind of walk the property and see what he has to say, and we'll go from there. On the day I recorded this, we were having another crazy windstorm, as you can see from how it's blowing me around. So pretty much none of the nice nature sounds will be allowed in this one because it's nothing but wind. The guy that met me out here from Wildlife Fisheries and Parks was a little camera shy, so he did not want any footage of him, and I totally understand that. That's fine. He did show me that down in the low area where we had just gotten some rain a couple days ago, we were wondering what these digs were, and as we examined them, we figured out those are crawfish holes. I've only ever seen crawfish holes where they have the little mud hut on top, but he said here in central Kentucky, sometimes they don't build the little hut. This hole we discovered after we purchased the land, and we are affectionately calling it our sinkhole. It has had trash thrown in it, barbed wire, all kinds of stuff for probably 20 or 30 years, and it needs to be addressed. Luckily, I'm not that worried about it because we will have to excavate some stuff out of the hill so that we can put our house there, and we will just fill that in as we excavate. There are a few rocks here and there that need to be picked up and dealt with so they don't get mowed over, but other than that, everything is looking pretty good. Well, I heard from a friend of mine that there were possibly some resources out there through the USDA or some other programs to help plant some trees or do some general wildlife stuff at our land. So I actually reached out to the USDA office near here. It's one county over for my area, and they put me in touch with somebody at Wildlife Fisheries and Parks. His name was Randall. He was great. He came out and met me at the land. We walked over the whole property. The gist of it was he was going to point out maybe some invasive species that were there that we needed to keep an eye on, and generally just tell me, help me identify some of the trees that we had on the land. There were some in a fence row, and kind of give a general idea of where would be a good place to plant things based on if it was kind of a low level and it had more moisture there, what kind of trees would do well there. I was interested to learn all of this. One of the first things we came across was this wild rose. He said it was originally brought here decades ago to be like a natural fence line because it grows up in kind of a bramble, and if you put those on a property line, cattle and stuff would not really want to go through it because it's got a bunch of thorns. But he said it's gotten to be an invasive species, just like a lot of these plants are that you bring in to handle some problem. They end up growing so fast and taking over that a lot of the native species just can't thrive. There's another one that they really want you to watch out for here in central Kentucky. It's called bush honeysuckle. We had honeysuckle in Mississippi, but it grew more like a vine, and it was pretty invasive. It would kind of take over a fence row. These also grow oftentimes in fence rows, but they're more of a shrub. They look kind of like a bush. The reason that they are invasive is they just outpace the growth of almost all the other plants. They bloom earlier. In fact, this is pretty early in the year. It's early February when I'm recording this, and they already have buds that are starting to open like they're about to put out leaves. He identified some of those, and he just said you want to watch out for them and kill any of those that you can because they'll really take over in a fence row or like an underbrush situation. One of the other invasive species that we have a lot around here, in fact, this plant grows in all 50 states now, is poison hemlock. It's very poisonous if you ingest it. Any part of the plant is poisonous to ingest, but it also is an irritant for allergies. So it has a very distinctive white bloom, and we had an issue with it last year, all of us. We seemed to really be bothered by the pollen of it. He did walk me around and found the beginnings. The property had been bush hogged, but we found kind of the beginnings of it starting to come back. It looks almost like a fern. The little leaves on the young plants have kind of a fern-like look, but when they grow up, The stalks will have kind of some purple spots on them, and then the flowers are very easy to identify in the spring because they kind of have these pods and there are a bunch of white flowers on them. I definitely want to get rid of those, and he showed me there are some herbicides that you can spray at a certain concentration level that won't hurt the grass or any of the grassland stuff, but they'll get rid of that hemlock. So I'm going to be taking care of some of that. Speaking of the grass, he looked at the grass that we had and he could judge based on what was growing there that the soil was pretty well balanced in its pH. He said there's a different type of grass. I don't remember what he called it, but you'll see it kind of pop up more as it starts to get warmer and almost take over only when there's more acidic soil. So we have a lot of limestone in this area. I was asking him if there were any type of ground cover plants or anything to kind of help hold soil on a hill from eroding, and he said the best thing around here is a fescue, which is a grass. It does a great job. It grows, it's a cool weather grass, so it grows even in cool weather, unless it's just below about 15 or 20 degrees Fahrenheit. He said that's probably going to be your best bet as far as holding soil. So that's good to know. If I just keep regularly mowing what's out there, some of the more stalky stuff that's been there because it's only been bush hogged should kind of go away, and it will allow that grass to thrive. There are a few trees on the property already. Most of them are along this one fence row where a fence used to be, and because of that you can actually see where they clipped some barbed wire here and there, and the tree actually grew around it. So those will definitely not be something that I want to mess with as far as lumber if we ever end up taking those down. Some of them look a little sickly. They are hackberry trees, not a terribly useful tree. The wood is kind of soft. They'll provide some shade, and they do have some little blackberries that wildlife likes, so I imagine some birds and other critters will be around and like those. We don't have any plans to get rid of those just because they're already there and established, and we'll probably plant some more things in that fence row as we go, and then maybe as other trees that we want more grow up, then we can take out some of those that are kind of sickly. But that's kind of the plan with those. There's one really large hackberry all the way at the back of the property, which is a pretty nice stately tree. So we plan on leaving that one. There's a small ash that's right in the fence row on the back of the property. I really like ash, but there is an emerald ash borer. It's a bug that's actually taken out a bunch of the ash across the country. So we'll see how long that one lasts. This cat is crunching on his food right here in front of me while I'm trying to record. We got a kitten recently. And then there is one medium-sized kind of pin oak. So it's related to the red oak family, has a pretty broad leaf, but he said, you know, it should be a good tree for a long time. They do grow kind of slow, so going forward, I don't think we'll plant a bunch of those, but as far as it's already there and existing, I have no plans on getting rid of it. It's in a fence row and it's not in the way of anything that we're building, so that tree's probably going to stay. For one of the low areas where it looks like all of the water drains, Randall walked around and showed me in that area kind of some of the tree species that would do well. I was looking for a few things. I wanted some down in that area that could handle that really wet soil. It drains out of there pretty good, but it's wetter than it is up on the hill where we'll have the house. But I also wanted to have recommendations from him on trees that grow pretty fast. So he said tulip poplars do well. I like sycamores, they grow pretty fast. Black walnut are pretty trees, and he said those can handle a pretty wet soil. As well as there's one called a swamp white oak. That one does not grow fast, but it does well in kind of that wetter area. Some of the other trees we plan on putting on the property would be sugar maples. They're native here, so we'll do those. They turn a real brilliant, almost fluorescent yellow color in the fall, and they're very pretty. We have a few boundaries. One up next to the road, and then there's a house that's already existing. It's a little junky in the back of it. It's just an older house, and we would love to build up a boundary along those fence rows just to have a little separation and privacy. We have white pine here, so those would be a good boundary. One final thing I wanted to touch on, I was asking him about the planting season for trees here. Previously where we were in central Mississippi, it was about 4 hardiness zones different there than it is here. Stays colder here longer, and if you don't know, trees typically like to be planted or transplanted in the fall or winter. They're dormant, that way they can start to establish root systems and put those roots down, and they're not having to worry about also growing a canopy with leaves. He said really through about March here where I am in central Kentucky, is about the end of it. He said if it's a weird year and it starts to warm up a little before that, he would probably quit. Basically, once the warm weather comes, you don't really want to be planting trees. I thought it was interesting that I was able to meet with him, found some resources locally. I thought I would pass them on because you probably have something in your area if you're looking for some help on what might be an invasive species on your land, or just some species of trees that are native to your area. There are resources out there, so call around, do a little bit of digging, meet with somebody, and learn some stuff. It was really fascinating to me to learn more about these species because we're a little bit new here to this area, and we really like learning about that kind of thing. Anyway, hope you found that interesting. See ya.